Number one is that God, the godly dad, loves those under his care. Can you talk to us about love and what you mean by love?
What's interesting about the concept of love is, like a lot of other things, like money, sex, power, influence. Satan wants to take the idea that God had, which was perfect and holy, and then distort it. I think you could make an argument that Satan really invented or created nothing. He distorts what God creates.
Oh, that's
And
good.
so what he's done with love over time is he's turned it into a feeling, he's turned it into a song, he's turned it into an emotion. And I think the number one word most dads or men need to know about the word love is it is not a feeling, it's not an emotion, it's not something you fall into, it's a choice. It is a choice. And love is kind of like, navigate or drive or eat. Like you're going to choose these things. You're going to on purpose do these things. And when I'm loving my wife, well or loving my children well, it's because that's the path I've chosen. And quite frankly, I've chosen it against spiritual opposition. I've chosen it against cultural redefinition. I've chosen it in spite of all that. And loving is so important because often dads start having kids and they're like, oh, what happened to my poker night? What happened to my wife? What happened to my free time, my golf game, my money, my sleep? And they become a little bit embittered
Yes, for
toward
sure.
these children around when they should see them as the biggest blessing, right? Blessed is he whose quiver is full of children. And we've got to get to that place mentally where, to your point, it sounds kind of duh, but honestly, a lot of guys, especially in their 20s or 30s, still have some low grade resentment against all these kids running around draining the bank account. And we got to get past that.
I never thought of that, Kent. You said something that hit me just now. You said basically love is when we choose for something, but in that choice for love, we are choosing against.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
So to choose love, you're choosing against certain things. What are some other things that a man is choosing to reject?
One of the biggest ones is self.
Yep.
Because by definition, if I love someone, I'm putting their needs above mine. I heard a friend of mine, Tim, who's a really skilled leader and a godly man, and he leads a giant organization. And he said one time, he goes, I am desperately searching through scripture to try to find the verse that says the wife should give up her life for the husband. He goes, but I just can't seem to find it. But I can find plenty where the husband is to give up his life for his wife, right? So the number one thing we're choosing against when we choose to love is we're choosing against self. Self, and we're putting somebody first. That could be that old lady crossing the street. That could be that guy who needs, his lunch paid for. That could be the young lady with her car broken down on the side of the road. We're choosing that we are not going to get to work on time because we are going to stop and help that person who's broken down on the side of the road. The biggest one is we're choosing against self.
So guys, listen up. This is so important. Start there.
Yeah.
Have you rejected yourself?
Even Jesus said, I didn't come to do anything of my own accord. Jesus didn't come down with like the quarterback thing on his wrist and he's calling plays and doing all that. He came down and said, hey, here's my objective. Do exactly what God said. I have no agenda. I could argue biblically, Jesus had, quote unquote, no agenda of his own. The agenda that he had was whatever God downloaded to him. He's like, I'm here to do what God said. Even John 17, Jesus prayed and said, hey, I kept the ones you gave me. Like, he's like having this conversation with God. I did what you sent me to do. And a lot of guys get into marriage or fatherhood and they don't realize they just agreed to give up themselves.
Appreciate that first point. So second point, this is another no duh. And I just got done doing this morning. I take an hour every morning. I pray through the Lord's Prayer most of the time. And this morning I did this. The godly dad prays for guidance and wisdom. So not only do I do that, but I prayed for my family, each one by name. And I prayed for my sons and the women in their lives, or the women who will come into their lives. For my youngest son doesn't have one yet. I'm doing this but you're saying specifically for guidance and wisdom. Talk to us.
Well, what's interesting is when Nehemiah, he's working as the cupbearer, and his brother visits him, and he says, hey, man, how's it going back home? His brother says, not good. It's awful. And so his brother tells him that. And if you look there's like a stretch in Nehemiah 1 where Nehemiah does about 4 or 5 things right in a row. He weeps, he fasts, he prays, and he confesses his own sin. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The bottom line is Nehemiah's knee-jerk reaction to trouble was prayer. Knee-jerk reaction to it wasn't like last resort. Well, I've already strategized and budgeted and done my best and tried my hardest and manned up and pulled up my bootstraps. I guess I better pray now. As my no, it was like no. One of the very first things he did, and so the filter for us as husbands and dads is today. Some guy's going to listen to this podcast, Jim. He's going to go home, and his wife is going to tell him some bad news, or his daughter's going to come home and say something went wrong, or his son's going to come home with, an attitude. And the dad is going to have a problem right in front of him. And the question becomes, is your knee-jerk reaction as a man, as a dad, as a husband to pray when you're faced with trouble? Is that our knee-jerk reaction? And man, that was convicting. Sometimes we write books and people think we got it all figured out. That's why we wrote the book. Heck no, man. When I went through Nehemiah, I was like convicted every other page. I mean, he's an amazing leader, and he starts from a posture of prayer. He doesn't end up there as a last resort.
Even when he gets to Jerusalem, he rides the walls and prays and asks for wisdom.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's just, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think prayer is a man's knee-jerk reaction. I think a man has to learn the discipline of stopping and praying. I've been praying with people in ministry over 3 decades. And the number one prayer, I always pray a verse over people. I love praying the Bible. The number one verse I pray over people is James 1:5. It's the one time in the Bible where God says, if you ask me for wisdom, I will give it. It's a guarantee. It's a slam dunk. God wants to give us wisdom, but we have to ask for it. So I think for men to go, okay, I need to choose love and reject self. I need to choose to pray and reject my knee-jerk problem-solving compartmental mindset, right? So these are both things the guy has to kind of train himself into. And the third thing is, I love this one, Kent. To me, this one, it really separates the great dads from the good dads. All right. The godly dad anticipates that trouble will arise. And you write this, you said, it will always be easier to see trouble and mistakes in hindsight. We have to learn to anticipate as many as we possibly can, see them coming, recognize the danger before it gets close to us, before it is too late. To me, that is the critical aspect of a great dad.
Like, so as a kid, you think minute by minute. And if you don't get your ice cream right now, it's a bad day, right?
Yep.
And then as you get a little bit older, you think hour by hour, and then you might think day by day or week by week. Then you start thinking in terms of months, probably when you're in like high school. And then when you're in college and young 20s, you start to think in years. And then when you're in your 30s and 40s, you think in decades. And when you're in your 70s, you think in terms of lifetimes. And so I've told my boys, I'm like, part of my job as a dad is to impart to you what I can observe from my longer time horizon capacity to think. While you only think in terms of days or weeks, my job is to give you perspective.
That's
and
good.
That perspective sometimes is just spans of time. And so what I'll occasionally do is I'll say, hey, what you're doing now, tell me how that's going to work out for you in 5 years or 10 years. So like kids, I was on the phone the other day with a guy who was talking to his young boy and daughter, and the son was beating up on the daughter, and they were kids, they were toddlers, they were goofing off. It wasn't evil, but he was like, hey, whoa, time out. As a young man, later, when you're older, you need to be a protector of women, not an abuser of women. You need to practice on your sister. You need to love her and protect her. And what he was doing was he was showing him, that little boy, he was helping his little boy look around corners and see into the future. Who do you want to be when you're 20 or 30? Let me help you get there, because the decisions you're making now, they ain't going to get you there. But with a slight adjustment, I've asked my boys, they're 14, 16, fighting each other. And I'm like, hey, what kind of relationship do y'all want when you're 30 and married? And they go, a good one. And I'm like, sweet. Are we planting those seeds now? We're not. Let's change how this is going. And we've got to help them do that. We got to look into the future a little bit, not be clairvoyant, but just be perceptive and observant.
Yeah. And just see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times as dads, we get so caught up and so busy, we aren't able to see the writing on the wall. And so we need to be able to see, okay, Junior's doing this played out down the road as this in our little daughters. That's right. In our sons, because they all have different temperaments. So we need to figure out, okay, what's going to hurt this kid? Like my middle son, Darby, is the only introvert in our family. He's the only one. And he's
that child.
And he's the middle son as well. And so he was always like kind of looking away. He never, Darby, look us in the eye. When you talk, look us in the eye. So I taught him how to shake hands, look people in the eye. He's a wonderful conversationalist now. People love him because he's learned to engage, right? But I saw the writing on the wall of this awkward 30-year-old guy who could only work with numbers, right? Does that make sense?
And you and I know if he doesn't build just the basic skills, just the basic ones, he doesn't have to become the most outgoing, gregarious person. But if we build the basic skills, we know that's going to unlock doors for him with his future in-law parents. We know it's going to unlock doors for him with his bosses. We know it's going to unlock doors for him to share the gospel when he's more winsome and approachable. We know we can see the restriction of opportunity in the future if this trend line continues. And so we're trying to unlock that for our kids. And we can do that as dads like nobody. We've got the perspective. We've got the history.
We just have to anticipate what's down the road and have that discernment.
That's right.
So the next one here, I really appreciate this because you don't get this point in a lot of parenting books. But you said it's a godly dad discerns true needs around him. And you wrote, we discern best when we're taking input in, not when we're spewing it out. Put another way, to discern is to listen. Listen with your eyes, our ears, our heart, our minds. Discerning, this goes back to your son playing tennis with your wife. Discerning is a posture of intake, not outflow. At the moment we're discerning, we're usually receiving, not giving. Do you want to extrapolate on that?
Well, what I would say is we've all been in this situation where our kids come home with some kind of a problem. And so if you're a dad with kids still in the home, those problems often have to do with something at school. So I think this is a very relatable scenario for many, many dads. The kid comes home and says, oh, my teacher, they just, and on they go, right?
Yeah.
They don't listen. They're too da, 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 da. The temptation as a dad is to go, oh, okay, I see the problem here. The problem here is that crazy teacher. And I'm going to go and, go to the school board. I'm going to get my 5 minutes in at the meeting. I'm going to send her I'm going to email her right now. Whoa. What I used to tell my boys was, so you have a rough teacher, do you? You have an over-demanding teacher. You have a unkind, unfair teacher who expects too much. That sounds interesting. Ever think you might have a boss like that one day? Right? And then we'd have a conversation about what should you do if you have a person in your life who is demanding. And then we just switch the problem. The problem is no longer, that teacher. The problem is, what are you going to do about it? 100% of the time, we own our response. 100.000% of the time, we own our response. My boys got so sick of me saying this. Jesus Christ dying on the cross at the moment said, Father, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. If he can say that while being nailed to the cross, you cannot be a jerk 14-year-old to your demanding teacher. And so I would occasionally have my boys come to me with a problem. They go, Dad, here's my problem. And I know Jesus died on the cross, so I can handle this. But listen. And I was like, exactly. And it's not that I didn't get it right all the time. I'm not trying to cast myself as I figured it all out. But what I am saying is, what's the actual problem? So when you say we discern the true needs, when your kid comes home and they feel left out of the cool social group, are you mad at the cool social group? Or do you realize your kid has a heart problem because they don't feel whole inside unless they're included? Wow, let's talk about that problem in their heart because they're going to have that with them forever. They're not going to have the same social circle forever.
Yep.
So let's talk about the true need. The true need is they need to feel secure in who they are regardless of what the cool kids are doing. And that's for us as a dad to discern and react to in these, 10 moments a day. I know it's hard. I've been there, but we got to do it to help our kids get through these issues.
Well, and here's the deal, dads, get out of your bulldozer, turn the engine off, put the blade down. You don't need to bulldoze their problem. You need to teach them how to work through it themselves. And what happened in your book, you talked about entitlement. And when we don't do that, we go to bat for our kids, even though our kids may be wrong. And it may just be a teacher that sees something great in our kids and is pushing our kids further than others would. If we try to bulldoze that problem down, we're creating a spoiled, entitled person who is not going to leave our house as an adult. And that's a huge warning for dads.